В газетах снова одна пропаганда. Страна в кольце врагов. Высшая ценность – это права и свободы, но не обычных граждан, а лидеров государства. А вот ваша свобода может закончиться за неудачную шутку. Власть критиковать нельзя. Как вы поняли, это 1937 год, и это шоу «37». И его ведущие – адвокат Эдуард Исецкий и судебные журналисты.
Бывший американский пожарный Гейлен Гранстав с 2011 года жил в России вместе со своей русской женой Анной. Занимался преподаванием языка и варил самогон. В 2017 году заказал через интернет пептиды и моющее средство для металла. Российские следователи посчитали, что американец попытался купить наркотики. Гранстав попал в СИЗО, где провел 20 месяцев. Его освободили только после того, как в прессе поднялся скандал. Тем не менее, его дело еще не закрыто.
Гелен, добрый день. 18 марта 2019 года, после 18 месяцев пребывания в российской тюрьме, вы были освобождены. Что по вашему делу в настоящее время и в каком статусе вы сейчас пребываете процессуально?
Actually, it was 20 months. Officially, the judge ruled that the case be returned to the prosecutor because there were conflicts with the facts that were revealed in court and what is claimed in the indictment against me. It doesn't match. So she said it was impossible to prosecute with these conflicts, sent it back to the prosecutor and said remove the conflicts.
And what do you think was the kind of real reason behind that? Just the case was falling apart?
Well, they never had a case to begin with. That was obvious. I don't know really who pulled the strings in that situation. It was very strange because, to me, it seemed very strange because the judge, even her demeanor was different that day. It was, to me, it had the appearance that someone else had made that decision. I don't know, maybe somebody finally intervened. I think one of the things that helped was there was a lot of journalists that showed interest in my case, my story. More facts were coming out, more people were taking an interest in it, and I think they realized finally at some point that, hey, this isn't happening in secret. People are going to know what's going on. There's going to be accountability. And so I think that had some influence.
So the media pressure was a big part of
it. To me, it seems like that's the only thing that they are worried about is saving face. You know, they want to look good.
And I'm assuming the American Embassy sent a representative to the...
Yes. Well, there was a representative came to the CEOs, of course, and visited me on a regular basis, came to many of the hearings. They were following the case very closely. They were also in close contact with my family in the States, with my lawyers here, with my wife, so they monitored it very closely.
But that was a formality, so it wasn't pressuring the judge too much.
No, they're really... in reality, they're powerless. You know, yes, it looks good for them to show an interest in one of their citizens and to be there, but they don't really have power to influence anything within the judicial system here. And the last thing they want is to exercise or to impose any appearance or to appear to be trying to influence the court because it becomes a political situation.
То есть, с вашей точки зрения, суды в России зависимы, хотя продекларировано, что они должны являться независимыми и самостоятельно в состязательном процессе все определять, тем не менее кто-то влияет на них, по вашему ощущению?
I can only tell you what my instincts tell me. To me, it is a dysfunctional system that they're almost programmed in what to say and what to do. My case is not the only one. I have no doubt in my mind there are other innocent people that have been tried, that have been convicted, because they don't hear the evidence. They refuse to. It's a process. It's not a matter of getting to the truth and what is justice. It's a matter of simply a formality that you're going to come before this court and then we're going to sentence you. It's not we're going to determine whether you're wrong. No, we're going to sentence you. It's just how much time you're going to get.
В ходе расследования дела и, соответственно, дальнейшего судебного производства вы сталкивались и со следователями, и с представителями тюрьмы, охранниками, конвоирами, с прокурорами, которые участвовали в ваших процессах. Как вы можете оценить их работу, их независимость, объективность?
I have a differing opinion of a lot of them. I'll start with the worst, and that is the police that do the transport. I met a few of them, a select few, who were great guys, treated me with respect. They were wonderful. but the vast majority of them were brutal. They really loved to intimidate. They would do things constantly in a way of being threatening to me, physically dragging me out of my cell when I would be in holding in the basement of the court, threatening me like they're going to beat me with those metal detecting wands they have, and just anything they could to try to break you down, make you feel like you have no power. You know, it was just their way of exercising authority over somebody. They very much enjoy it. My knee, you know, was injured August 9th of 18 while in transport to the court. I just had reconstructive surgery on it. It was completely torn apart. I mean, the bones were moving where they shouldn't be moving. And the police would just drag me up and down the stairs of the court. And my wife had talked to the warden of the prison. He allowed me to have a compression bandage, but the police would tell me to take it off so they could see my knee. And they'd look at it, it's fine. And they'd make me walk without it. So they were some of the worst. The police investigators, you know, I have kind of mixed feelings. They weren't bad guys. They certainly weren't. In fact, the investigator that actually closed my case, the last one I had, he and I, we had opportunity to talk quite a bit. And at the very end, the very last day that we met, he had the 4 volumes of case material, and he told me, he says, "Galen, I know this is all bullshit." He said, "I know you're writing a book about your situation." He said, "Please don't say that I was an asshole. I only done what my nachalnik made me do." That's the problem, because even when they're a decent person, they serve a functional role within that broken system by going ahead and doing what their boss says. I don't have hard feelings against him. In fact, he ended up quitting after that case. I don't know that it had anything to do with it, but he did. I think it's very unfortunate when you have people that blindly go ahead and do things they know are wrong, but it's their job.
This kind of sadistic treatment of prisoners, I mean, at some point it just comes down to, like you said, they were enjoying it. It was not. It wasn't like anybody was telling them they had to treat the prisoners that way.
No, not at all. And me, it was. I think it was partially because of being an American, because a lot of their insults were directed at me as an American. There were times they would put me, you know, the stacan, the very small compartment in the transport truck, and they would drive to all these other CISOs dropping guys off, and I could be in the box 5 hours, and then they would finally let me out, even though the truck could be empty, no other prisoners in it. They could let me out and put me in one of the big cages, but they would refuse to, and often would bang on the door and taunt me, call me Trump. It's just, there was one occasion we left the court at about 7 p.m. and they returned me to the CISO at 3 a.m. So you do the math. That's how long I was stuck in that box.
And your knee was injured as an accident in one of those vehicles.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what was the story with that again?
I was going up the steps on the vehicle to enter the prisoner compartment. They slide out from the truck and then they fold down. I don't know if there's some kind of a latch that should be secured there, or if there should have been a plate on the top step. I don't know that. But when I went up the steps, when I got to the top step, my foot went through because it was actually the top support of the hinge where the steps fold. So my leg went right through the steps up to just below the knee. I fell backwards, and it was high enough the only thing would reach the ground was my head. My head just bounced on the concrete, and I'm just hanging by my knee. Well, it damaged my knee, it damaged my neck. I had a concussion. There was 3-4 days that I couldn't even carry a conversation. I couldn't read. There was no ability to concentrate at all. And I asked for medical attention every single day. I said, I need a doctor, I need a doctor, I need a doctor. It was 17 days later when they took me to the hospital.
То есть милосердие в тех стенах не живет?
Oh no, anything but.
А как строились ваши отношения и как вы познавали правила в неформальные, которые существуют с сокамерниками, с теми, кто тоже содержался под стражей?
Well, you don't have any choice but to learn the rules. I mean, it starts when you first walk in your very first cell. there's a process that you go through. I mean, of interrogation, you have to give all of your information. They keep a registry of every prisoner that comes in. You have a passport that's made by the prisoners, and each prisoner, they keep track of which cell he's in, they know where he's from, they know all his information, what his case is, what he was charged with, all kinds of details. In fact, it was kind of strange to me actually when I had been in the CISO my first night less than 2 hours. And one of the prisoners was questioning me about information that was on a social website, my personal information. So they were already checking it because they have access to the internet in the cell. And that was an eye-opener when you realize that they have a very long reach. So the rules, you learn that right away, and the rules can vary from one cell to the next. As far as very specific individual things, each cell can basically set their own rules. But you have certain rules that pertain to the prison as a whole. Technically, no one is supposed to touch anyone else. No acts of aggression, and yet it happens. It happens. In my case, there was one incident where there was 25 or 30 guys in one cell, and they decided it was my night to get a beating. I was probably pretty lucky to get out of there.
What exactly happened? There was some sort of accusations leveled against you?
Yeah, there were two young punks, for lack of a better way to describe them, that were in my cell. They had just been put in there. They'd been in for a couple of weeks only. I had been in that cell at that point about 9 months. They came in, they wanted to, first off, they wanted to make alcohol. Well, they were both just really immature and very confrontational. There was always conflicts. Yeah, they wanted to make samagon in the cell. One of them was 19, the other was 23, but they both acted about 15. They were just ridiculous. And I was like, you are not going to have alcohol in the cell. I mean, the last thing I needed was two young, stupid guys drunk in my cell. I mean, there was going to be a problem. And so I stopped them from doing that. And then during the nighttime, I saw them, they were supposed to be manning the road, you know, because our cell was a hub for other cells. The mail would come in, you would check the numbers, you'd know which way to send it, you know, to go to the proper cell. But they started getting curious about what other people were talking about and what was going on, so they were opening other people's mail and reading it. Well, that's really against the rules. That's serious. So I stopped the road because I wasn't going to allow that to happen, you know. As soon as I done that, I told them, all you have to do, if you want to have access to the road, and this was my whole reason in stopping it, I said, you tell the guards you want to be put in another cell. You're not happy here. And it's true, you can do that. You can request, and sometimes they will listen. And I knew that if they asked, and then the guards would talk to me, I'd be like, yeah, get them out of here, no problem. But instead, when I would go to court or I would go to meet with my lawyers or whatever, whenever I was out of the cell, they would be yelling out the windows to the other cells, and they were telling people that I was an informant for the police. And that was how the whole problem started. So I became the snitch when I really wasn't.
And then if you can talk about it, how did the confrontation actually go down?
It was not with one person. It started between me and I don't even know for sure. I think he was maybe from Tajikistan, maybe. It wasn't Russian. And then there was another Russian guy there, and they were questioning what was really happening in the cell, and they were hearing all these things. And it was obvious to me. I wasn't getting everything. I wasn't understanding everything they were saying, but it was very obvious there were a lot of lies told. I knew that much. I was trying to make my point, but my Russian isn't the best, and so it was difficult. And then as the night went on, they kept putting additional people in the cell. More and more came in, and I hadn't really noticed how many people were in there because I had walked to the far side and was over there talking. I had my back to the door. Well, then someone comes from behind me and grabs my shoulder and starts shouting something at me, and I don't have a clue what he's saying. He was speaking very fast. He was from Dagestan. Maybe it was his pronunciation, whatever. It just wasn't clear. I didn't understand, and I told him that I didn't understand him, and he looked real frustrated, and he started talking to the Russian guy that was standing there, and they were back and forth, and I thought they were arguing. So okay, whatever, and I turned my back, and moments later, I felt the first blow to the back of my head, another blow to the side of my head, somebody hitting from this side, and then they were trying to grab my arms and trying to hold me out while others were hitting me, and it was a mess.
And then how did that stop? How was that ended?
It's strange because I don't really know how. Somehow I ended up on the other side of the room, and I heard the key enter the door, and they were guys standing in front of the door to keep me from getting to the door. But when the guard opened the door, they have to move because they were bringing in another prisoner, and so I went out the door. It was just good timing.
Okay, and the fact that so many prisoners got into that cell right before that beating happened, does that mean that the guards were somehow
The guards
involved?
knew. I wasn't even supposed to be put in that cell. They were keeping me separated from the others because of all the problems that were going on. But that night, this one particular guard insisted that I go in. And I shouldn't have gone. I should have held my ground, but I went along with it, and I'm certain that he knew what was going on, absolutely.
And these informal rules that the prisoners have within the detention center, I mean, on the one hand, I guess they can be very brutal. On the other hand, they do serve a function.
Sure. And I utilize that system a lot too, as far as to help others, because when I would learn of guys who maybe didn't have even some basic things, maybe coffee, for example. I mean, coffee is a luxury in prison, you know, and so I always had a steady supply. My wife always brought things for me, and so I would have her buy extra things, you know, maybe like candies or cakes or whatever, and extra coffee and tea, and I would send that to the cells where I knew the guys didn't have things. So it serves a good purpose in that way, absolutely. The problem is that that's also how they distribute contraband. You know, drugs make their way through the prison as well. You know, everything is for sale. Everything is for sale. That's the bottom line. If you want to pay for it, you can have just about anything, I think.
And the reason that whole system has appeared is because of the very draconian rules of the detention center? Why is it?
I think it's the combination of things. I think it's partially the product of the mentality of the people that those jobs attract, because it's a very low-paying job. It's not a skilled job. So you're getting people that probably are dysfunctional in serving in, not all of them. Now there are some really good employees in there too, but the bad ones I think are guys who probably couldn't function in a normal job. So they take this and they can be the person that they are.
And then the system kind of arises around that to just fill the basic functions that they're sadistically denying to.
Yeah, and the guards, they don't want confrontation. They would rather keep the prisoners happy, in a sense. And, you know, they like to have the authority and the control, and some of them are quite sadistic, but at the same time, if you look at the whole picture, then they want to keep the community happy. So in other words, those key prisoners, those criminals that really are in control of things that are happening in the prison, they'll listen to them. You know, if they say, hey, we want this guy moved to the cell, yeah, let's move him. You know, they'll do what they ask.
Гелен, вы уже упомянули один термин из неформального сленга тюремного — дороги. Какие еще слова из неформального сленга узнали там и, соответственно, что они значат?
Most of it I try to forget. You know, it actually brings up a funny story, because I learned what they told me. I didn't have any way to check it, and so they have a different word for everything. You know, whether it's a cup, a knife, a bed. I mean, there's a toilet. There's always another word for everything. When I first went in, my Russian was really bad. And there was a couple of the guys said, well, we'll help you. And they started out doing real well. They would teach me both the slang and write Russian. And so one day, And this guy in particular, he and I were about the same age. He's a Russian. He actually had a former political job, so it's not like a drug involved in drugs or anything like that. It was basically, the way he described it to me, someone else wanted his position, and that's why he ended up in there. And I tend to believe it because he was a really good guy. But anyway, all in good humor, he was teaching me different things. And then when one of the guards came, he nudged me. He said, "Musor." And I said, "Musor?" He said, "Yeah." So the next day, they have us get out of the cell, line up in the hallway so they can search us and search our cell. And the guard comes to me, and I'm looking right at him, and I nudged the guy next to me. I said, "Musor." The guard didn't find it amusing, but all the other inmates, there was 19 of us, they all started laughing. You have to be careful. You have to be careful.
Вы побывали в 3, вы сказали, СИЗО, следственных изоляторах. Отличия какие-то есть по камерам, по условиям содержания между этими СИЗО?
All of them are in poor condition as far as the buildings go. There were different things I think I noted between them. I think of those 3, I was in CISO 5, CISO 1, and CISO 3. I think CISO 5 was probably, I don't know, I had less problems there in general. I think in CISO 5 you had fewer drug-related crimes. There's a big difference between those criminals involved in drugs and those in stealing and so forth, or financial crimes, for example. There were some of the guys who I met who were businessmen, who were bankers. They were normal guys. They were intelligent, educated. They were fun to talk to. We had really, there was one particular guy that I used to sit in the evenings, and every evening we'd sit and have tea and talk, and it was just, you would almost forget you're in prison because it's so normal. But at CISO 3, it was totally different. It was completely different. It was far more aggressive. The mentality of the prisoners, it was just, for lack of a better way to put it, it was like the intelligence curve just dropped. They were just entirely different mentality. CISO 1, I don't know, because I was always in the hospital section there, so I can't say much about the rest of the facility. In the hospital section, they were renovating a lot there. I never was in one of the good cells. The ones I were in were unbelievable. I mean, the paint falling off the ceilings and walls. I mean, you'd wake up, you'd have paint chunks on your clothes, stuck in your hair, and it always stunk. And I mean, it's filthy. It was horrible. But as I understand it, and I saw what they were doing in some of the other cameras, I saw that where they were renovating, and actually it was looking quite decent. So I think by now it's probably, that's been 8-9 months since I was there. So I'm sure they've done a lot.
And I mean, you saw some conditions that shocked you that you never thought could be possible in the 21st century. I
thought it only existed in Hollywood, You always see these movies of a Russian prison as this dark, dank hole, that stinks and it's foul, and it is that bad. And I remember coming back from court, oftentimes coming in, usually it was very late at night when I would get at CISO 3, and they would bring me through the prison. I would have to come in on the first floor and then go up the stairs. And the rats in there were huge, and they weren't afraid of people at all. I mean, it was like, I'd never seen such a thing, I mean, I thought things like that just existed in the movies, but in the evenings, when they do the cell checks in the evenings, everybody brings their trash out and puts it in the hallway. And the rats come out and go through the bags of trash. It was crazy, man. I always said the rats are the size of cats. I think my cat would run from them.
I feel like we should give a little background maybe about where you come from, how you ended up in this situation. Just can you tell us? It
was a complete fluke, to be honest with you. In the past, I had been working in the States in project management for commercial construction. And in that kind of work, I mean, you live that job. It's a 7-day-a-week thing. I mean, maybe you're not on the job site, but it's in here. It has to be, or you're not going to be successful. My wife and I had been married 4 or 5 years, and she hadn't seen her family during that time. She really wanted to visit them. She really wanted me to visit them. And so we looked into it, and the tourist visa was for 3 months, 90 days. And I said, well, let's just go. We'll go for 3 months. I'm not working. We'll have 3 months to see everything. I said, and I made the mistake. I said, I want to see it all. I think now I've just about seen it all. But after I was here for about maybe 6 weeks or so, someone approached me about working here. And I hadn't considered it, you know, but then I thought, well, I don't know, what difference does it make whether I'm here or there? And right now my wife's happy, we're near her family. And I thought, well, I talked to my wife and she's like, you would really move here? I said, well, maybe let's try it for a year, you know? And so I started working, and just every year went by, and as it went by, we had more friends, life was more normal, and I wasn't working as much. So it was nice. I mean,
teaching English, making Russian friends.
Yeah, and it was interesting because, you know, I taught a lot of, I had a lot of students who were children, but I also taught a lot of business executives. And that was really interesting because I got to meet some very interesting people, some people that I thoroughly enjoyed just having the opportunity to sit and talk with them. You know, some of them, you know, are so diverse, their jobs were varied, but their perspective on things and their experiences through life, it was interesting for me, extremely interesting. So it kept me captivated, you know, kind of like a kid, you know. I was always interested in what the day would bring, you know. So it wasn't a boring life, and it was good. It has been, like I say, we've made some of the greatest friends possible, and there was no reason to run home, you know. Yeah, America will always be my home. That's where I'm from, but you know, people think it's strange that I came and stayed, but I think it's strange not to walk through a door of opportunity to see what's there, you know. If you don't like it, you can walk back out, you know.
Or at least you thought so at the time, and then this whole thing happened, and just tell us again what.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny, interesting thing. I learned a lesson. You always should listen to your mother. When I told my parents what I was going to do, the first thing my mother said is, "Oh, Galen, not Russia. Anywhere but Russia." She says, they put innocent people in prison in Russia. I said, Mom, Stalin's been dead for a long time. Don't worry about it.
So you came, you were here for several years, and then you decided to order some peptides.
I had ordered peptides for years. Anytime that I needed them, it was no big deal. I always went through the wholesalers because it's cheaper.
Because you have Crohn's disease, so peptides is important to.
Well, yeah, it knocks down the inflammation. It speeds up the healing process without having to rely on things like prednisone. Prednisone caused a lot of problems for me. It caused high blood pressure. It caused me to have to be extremely irritable and aggressive, and I didn't like what it was doing to me. So I wanted to stay away from that as much as possible. So usually I just tried to do it with peptides. And if I caught it early, whenever I would come out of remission, I would start to have a flare-up with it. If I got on them right away, it would knock it down quickly. Every time that I ordered, it's standard. They always offer you other things. And these sellers, this is what a lot of people, I've seen some of the comments on the internet, how they think this is so strange. Why would you buy a cleaner from somebody you bought peptides from? But they don't understand. These guys in China, they're sitting there selling for half a dozen companies. It's not some guy in one location, or like what you would go to a store. These guys are brokers, and they want to peddle everything they can and every dollar they can squeeze out of every transaction. And so the minimum shipping fee is $50. Well, the peptides are tiny, they're light, so you're paying $50 for this little box, you know. And that's always the reasoning. Well, you know, you don't have to pay more shipping. Well, maybe you want this, maybe you want that. Well, she had named half a dozen things, and most of them I didn't even know what they were. I don't know whether they were chemicals or what. There was like letter and number combinations. And I was like, I don't even know what it is. No, I don't want it. No, I don't want it. And when she said cleaning solvents, in particular an anhydrous metal cleaner, immediately I remembered back in the 80s in my motorcycle shop in America, I used a chemical that was literally, that's how it was labeled. It was an anhydrous metal wash or metal cleaner. And I used it for the new motorcycle parts that would come in to remove the markings that were on them and everything. Well, I wanted a cleaner to clean copper. To be honest with you, it's because I make my own samagon and I enjoy it. In the States, I always brewed beer and made wines as a hobby. I always wanted to distill, but it's illegal in America. So when I'm here and I find out, man, everybody does this, really? So I started thinking, oh, I could do it, it'd be fun, you know? And so I did, but it had, there was a residue or a film that was built up inside of it, and I didn't know how to get it out without scrubbing it, and copper's soft. I didn't want to leave scratches in it because it'll just make it worse in the long run. So I was like, okay, yeah, but, and then that was the other thing. I said, but I'm seeing it here on the website. These are cases. I don't want all this. I only want one bottle. No problem, 1 liter, you can buy 1 liter. Okay, how much? $15. And I had my pencil and paper there, I added it up. Nope, it put me over by $5 because I wasn't going over $300 for my order because that's where the rates go up with MoneyGram. So I said, no, I'm not gonna do it. And explained why. Okay, $10. So it put me within the $300 limit. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. $10 purchase, 20 months.
Right, because in that cleaner there happened to be a prohibited substance, prohibited in Russia, and when it arrived in Russia, obviously customs or somebody took note of it and decided to stage this elaborate arrest as soon as it got to your door.
Yeah, there's some things that really aren't clear on that, to be honest with you, whether it was my package or not, or whether they used this as an excuse. Because the reason I say that, every time over the years that I have bought peptides, every single time, the peptides came 10 to a box. I ordered 3 boxes, so there should have been 30. What arrived was 2 boxes of 15. Why would the packaging be different in this package, only time in the 12 years or so that I have been buying these? The other thing, they said that it was not in the bottle that was shown because I pulled it up on my computer, showed them what I bought, printed it out for them even. But they said, well, that's not what was in there. It was in some kind of a drinking bottle or something. And well, I don't know anything about that. Well, that was the whole basis for smuggling, is if you tried to deceive them. Well, I didn't do anything to deceive you. I didn't know it was in there in the first place. I didn't package it. So why are you telling me that I was the smuggler? It doesn't make any sense.
So when it arrived at your apartment, they burst in. Everybody, and they already had the lawyers, the witnesses, everything was prepared.
Oh yeah. And at first they started in saying it was. He called it a psychotrope. He said it's popular in the nightclubs, and I said I've never been to a nightclub, not one time in my time here in Moscow. And he's like, well, maybe you wanted it for your sport, and he's looking at my bicycle hanging up there, you know, and I'm like. They pay people to clean the machines at the gym. Why would I want to do that? It doesn't make sense. And I had no clue, but they say that people actually drink this cleaning solvent or something. And I find it very hard to believe, but apparently there was enough for them to charge me with it.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, because of the difference in the way this case was handled also, when you think about it. First of all the evidence verifies my statement from the very beginning. Not one thing ever changed. All the evidence verified exactly what I told them. They still charged me with smuggling and still want 10 to 20 years. But there was a Russian guy, a scientist, 2 years earlier, knowingly bought that chemical. Knowing it was wrong, knowing it was prohibited, bought it, was busted with it, didn't serve any time in the CISO, got 2 years probation. Knowingly done it. But that was a Russian. My lawyers found another case where a Russian guy was a bodybuilder and apparently bought this or a substance like it and was caught. They dropped the case because he wasn't dealing. But you get an American who bought a cleaner and it happens to have that chemical, oh, we're going to put him 10 to 20. I mean, you can see it how you want, but it doesn't make any sense to me why you would handle other cases so differently.
After seeing this kind of absurd situation, do you want to tell something to police here that they should handle these kind of cases differently, the drug cases?
I I could tell them a lot of things, but I don't think they would ever listen. It's all part of the same system. It works together. The courts, the police, all of it it's intertwined, and it doesn't function separately. And so it's the whole entire system is messed up. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, even if you have like the investigator in my case, he knew it was wrong, but he went ahead and done it. I think there's a lot of them who know what they're doing is wrong, but they go ahead with it because it's just part of the system.
And these drug cases have been in the news a lot recently with Ivan Golunov, the Russian journalist who was framed, the police admitted, on drug charges.
Ironically, you know, the police, the supervisor for the drug investigative unit, on his case was the same one as on mine.
On the Golunov case was the same investigators on yours, yeah.
There were several actually that came around. I always had hopes that things would change, but I didn't see a lot of improvement. They took my reports. They usually would take photographs. I kept a detailed journal of everything that happened, and in my planner I also kept detailed notes of exact times and when events occurred. And so they would take photographs of pages of that. I don't know what they ever done with it. I contacted one of them since my release. I can't think of what her name is, but I was asking her for copies of some of the things that I had shared with her, but I never heard back.
But do they keep the guards honest, at least in some situations? Did they have any effect?
I think so. I think even though the system is a mess and dysfunctional, I think that there is still some fear of retribution, of accountability. So whenever you have an authority come in, especially an outside authority, it gets their attention. And you know, I can even say, you know, I guess this kind of connects, just as an example with the journalists. When the journalists started appearing at my trial, the police would talk about it. And I noticed they backed off some then, because now they knew, oh, there's journalists here, you know. And even within the prison, the way that I was treated there actually improved after the journalists started showing up, and I was able to use it as leverage because, I don't know, I guess you heard the story about the food that was brought in, my wife had brought, and there was one guard in particular, when my wife would bring food for me, she would destroy my food. I mean, literally destroy it. Now, they do a search of any food products that come in, and that's normal. But she would literally just destroy everything. I mean, it would just be broken to nothing and all mixed into one bag. And it's like, what is this? It's garbage, you know? And then the last time when I finally lost it, I got my food and there was hair and even maggots crawling in the bag. And I was like, no. And I beat on the door and beat on the door and beat on the door until the guards came. And I went through about 3 or 4 times of doing this and doing this and doing this until I finally, I guess, called the administrative portion of the prison, and the warden agreed to see me. He said, bring him to my office. So I showed him what had been done. And I was able to use that to my advantage, because I told him, I said, I'm going to tell you something. Journalists are coming to my trial on a regular basis now. I said, you fix this problem or I tell the journalists what's going on in here. And he said, it won't happen again. And sure enough, the next time my food came, there was nothing opened. It was all just fine.
What are you thinking now about your future? You're kind of stuck in Russia.
Man, I don't know. Everybody keeps asking me what my plans are, but how do you make plans when you don't know what you can even do? You don't know what your options are. At this point, I don't have a visa. I haven't had a visa since November 12th of 17. They give me registration in my apartment. How can I have a registration legally without a visa? I have no legal basis to be in this country, so that's illegal in itself. But no problem, we'll give you registration. I don't know, man. They make rules up, and everybody else has to go by them, but they don't.
Гелен, когда окажетесь на родине в Америке, расскажете о том, что медведи по улицам не ходят, на велосипедах не ездят и водку не пьют, и все медведи, которые у нас есть, только в правительственных кабинетах сидят.
Well, I don't want to say that stereotypically, because I don't know. I haven't met all of them. I can tell you that that Russia has a very dysfunctional judicial system. It's unfortunate, but even within that, you know, man, I could talk all day about some of the problems and the mistreatment, the abuse, but it would be a discredit to those few guys who were in the police, those few guys who worked in the CISO who treated me well, because there were some of those. They really, I mean, I can't even really put into words how much it meant to me just to be treated like a normal human being, you know. Some of them really went out of their way, and I don't want to say stereotypically, because even in that case I can't. I learned firsthand, you have good and you have bad. It's like everywhere. I mean, America, you have good, you have bad. It's show me a country where that doesn't exist. You know, it's in every country and it's in every system. This just happens to be a very dysfunctional system.
Виски так продолжаете, делаете для себя?
I haven't since I've been released yet, no.
Так что лучше все-таки, виски или водка русская?
Whiskey, of course.
You can take the American out of America, but you can't take the America out of
That's
America.
right.
Yeah.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.